On the backside, I wrote down imposter syndrome. For me, in a lot of ways, that comes from being an immigrant in this country. A lot of internalized stuff that still working through today. The worry, the fear about our current context, country, and that fear and worry is just been so present for me this summer as I think about the immigrant communities. And then self-doubt was the last term I wrote down in the back. And again, it kind of relates to that imposter syndrome, to that worry, but like to this idea of like, very similar to you, like, did I start too late? Am I gonna make it? Am I doing enough for my people?
That was the voice of this week's guest, Edson Andrade. Edson is a counselor educator, which means he trains future mental health counselors with a particular focus on helping bilingual and bicultural clinicians. Edson strives to build trust and community in the classroom so that students feel both supported and challenged. His work and his research focus on supporting the success of men and undocumented students in higher education. You know, for myself, when I was a first year and second year teacher, I had the opportunity to teach in the newcomers program. And that was for students who had just recently arrived in the United States, which means that they had different levels of education. They either were a certain age, so they had to be in that class, or they were a certain language level and they were figuring it out. Now, I spoke only English, and my Spanish was pretty poor. So what I was able to do and learn was that those students wanted to learn just as much as anyone else. They were hungry to learn. And luckily with math, there's a lot more numbers than it is a whole lot of words, but it's sometimes helping students to scaffold what they already know to what you want to help them get to know. And so I'm really thankful for this conversation with Edson. In today's conversation, we discuss, one, what it's like teaching mental health counseling while your students have their own mental health challenges. Two, the mistakes that young teachers make when approaching an intervention, either between colleagues or even between students. Three, some best practices for working with undocumented students as we enter the 2025 school year. Four, the experience of working with 2025 helicopter parents as a counselor and as an educator. And five, Edson's experience as an immigrant student himself while DACA was under attack. I hope you're ready for today's show. Take out your notes and let's start the show. Welcome back to school, and welcome to the 2025-2026 school year and this season of Unmasking with Male Educators. Please enjoy this back to school series where we'll be talking to students, some of our young men. We'll be talking to educators, men from all over the world, backgrounds and expertise, providing tips and techniques to start the school year. As you know, only 23% of K-12 educators in America are male, and male students face disproportionate levels of discipline on many levels. So let's come together and start the school year off with confidence and effectiveness. Look forward to you being with us this season, and we'll see you soon. Dr. Edson Andrade, thank you so much for being on the show. So glad to have you.
Hey, Ashanti, it's good to be here, man. Appreciate you having me.
So glad. I'm excited for this conversation. I think we got some real exciting topics. You being down in Los Angeles area, would you introduce yourself to folks? Let them know what you would want them to know about you, and then we'll jump into the masks and into this rich conversation about not only education but how our masks show up in this work.
Yeah, sure. So, my name is Edson Andrade. I'm a professor of counseling at California State University, Fullerton. I just actually finished my first year here. After teaching a couple years at another university, I came here back home to Southern California, where I grew up, where I have my roots. And so it's been nice being able to be back home and working with a lot of students who share very similar stories to the one I grew up experiencing. And so I teach in what we focus on is teaching mental health counselors who are in their graduate program, going through their graduate training. And so that's a little bit about the work I do. Specifically, we have a really cool program here where we focus on training bilingual, bicultural counselors to better, address a lot of the needs, the mental health concerns and needs of the Latinx community here in Southern California.
Thank you. For those who are either in schools or have different types of schools, what does the role of a mental health counselor do? Is it just a counselor in particular who has a mental health like focus, or is a mental health counselor like a specific title that happens in the Los Angeles area?
Yeah, different names. across different states and stuff. But your mental health counselor it's very similar to licensed marriage and family therapist, right? Very similar work with perhaps a different focus or lens through which they view the work through.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that context. I think when I was teaching, we didn't have one of those. So I was
Yeah.
like, oh man, we could have used several of those. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
for sure. I think we
Yeah,
still can, right?
I think we can. I think most of our schools can, need to,
Yeah.
and should, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. For
Um,
sure.
and I think that what they have done to just the regular academic counselors is even more tragic because academic counselors end up with 4 or 5 students. You're not counseling. You're basically you're a scheduler, you know. And that's not a shade on any counselor out there. I know you do probably more work than you can ever be paid to do, but the fact that they have you with so many. When I was in high school, which was back in the day, my counselor had A through P or A through F, like I could when I went to go see him, I just walked in. It
Yeah.
was not like, "Oh, I'll see you in 2 weeks." You know what I'm saying? It was like, "Mr. Barranco, hey, what's up with these scholarships?" You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
so, yeah, so thank you for that, and thank you for the work because I think, as education is changing, we're gonna need to prepare schools for what we're seeing in the work, you know? So,
For
all
sure.
right, well, look, I'm already excited, but you and I get to start with the mask so that
Yes,
we can
sir.
just land this conversation into you and I getting to know each other a little better. Now, you get to decide as a guest, do you want me to go first or do you want to go first? And you just share the front and back of your mask, and then whoever decides to go, whoever you want to go first can go first.
Why don't you take us through it first, and then I'll follow up on you.
Okay, fantastic. Here's what I've drawn for today. This is it's like a wrestling mat. It's like a wrestling mat. There's normally an eye. I've been trying to figure out where to put the eye at, and so the eye goes over here somewhere. I'm still trying to really design this character. So this is the mask, and let's see. Okay, so what I've written here is I've written purpose driven, dead and caring. That's what I want people to see when I was a teacher. I wanted my students to see that now in the work as an educator on the outside of schools. I want people to see that I'm purpose driven. I'm definitely not here for this money that they pay you in the nonprofit world. I'm dedicated to this work, to this mission, and I think I'm a very caring person. And I've only recently started using the word caring because I think it was definitely not a word that growing up was a quality you say what makes you I'm a
Yeah.
caring person that wasn't respected to maybe at home and at family reunions, but definitely not outside the house.
Yep. Yep.
If you're too caring, something's wrong with you, or that's what my community taught me. So that's the front of the mask, and the back of the mask. It's pretty wild right now in this world. So I put the first one. I worry about the world, and more particularly, I worry about right here in the U.S. and what not only how we're being seen in the world, but what we're showing people around the world by our leaders, right? It's not me, but it's how we're represented, sadly. I think the second one I put was finally starting to value my worth. I wish I had learned to do that earlier in my life, but that's what I'm finally starting to do. I don't talk about it much, but I'm finally starting to do that. And sometimes I feel like I started too late, not only valuing my worth, but also just going forward with these dreams and goals that I thought sometimes were impossible. But I think intellectually, I don't think it's too late, but sometimes I feel like I waited too late. That's the
Bro,
math.
I don't know, man. As I hear you talk, I'm like, could you like look into me already? Because you're saying all the same things that it's just really hitting with me. I can relate a lot to what you're talking about. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, you get to go next. So thank you. Thanks for letting me go first.
All right, so I got today three little pictures, and then this first one is just a happy face. I want people to see me as friendly. I want my students to see me as relatable, especially as a person of color, knowing that there's not a lot of people in these systems who look similar. I want them to know that I'm a relatable face they can come to. Got little stick figures here holding hands, that just to represent a sense of being community oriented. It's big in my culture. It's big in what I hope to do in the classroom. Then I got this like silhouette here of a head here and look kind of like puzzle pieces together. And that's just uh I put empathy under that, but that's just like getting at the idea that we're all like these complex people, right? And I want my students to know that like I'm aware of that and I empathize with you because of that, right? And so that's the front of the mask, right? And so that was friendly, relatable, community oriented, and then empathetic. On the back side, I wrote down imposter, that imposter syndrome. For me, in a lot of ways, that comes from being an immigrant in this country. A lot of internalized stuff that still working through today. You wrote the worry, the fear about our current context in this country. That fear and worry has just been so present for me this summer as I think about immigrant communities. And then self-doubt was the last term I wrote down in the back. And again, it kind of relates to that imposter syndrome, to that worry, but like to this idea of like very similar to you. Like, did I start too late? Am I gonna make it? Am I doing enough for my people? So that's a lot of what I don't always show to my students.
Thank you. When you said the word, "Am I doing enough?" I think that sums up a big part of what I resonate with. Many of the words, but even that one, like, "Am I doing enough?" Like, and I think that one is so big because I think at the end of the day, like, I'm in a service work, right? And sometimes I could even be here in my office until dark, lock up, turn the alarm on, get home, try and make some food or grab something fast, and then I sit at the table and I'm trying to eat and take out the computer again. And I'm like it's almost like it almost I had this reflection with my mom once just recently at this bookstore, and I was telling a story about her like 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 if everyone's doing chores and I finish early, you just don't pretend like you're done. Like, because if you pretend like you're done, she gonna make up new chores. It was almost like you could just never be done,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, that's right.
And so I was like, why do I do that? Why do I get home after a friggin' 12 more hours and then I'm trying to pull out the computer to do some more,
Hmm.
right? Like it will always be more to do. I mean, we're creating a global movement, but I always oftentimes like just stop. Just stop. But in my
Yeah.
mind, I gotta get that one more email out. I gotta get that one more thing done. I gotta finish that one paper. And so I think like, am I doing enough? Is a question that I play. I got more to do. I'd probably say it more like, you got more to do. Get your butt in there and get more work. You got more to do, right? I don't think I ever asked myself, have I done enough? Have I really done enough today? I think I would probably, if I was being honest to myself, sometimes say yes. But I don't. I think I approach it toward the what I haven't done. So
Right.
I never give myself a chance to answer the question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so true, right? It's so much easier to that list of what we haven't done just kind of gets more of our attention
Yeah.
than the actual things we have done. We live in this system that's so rewards productivity, but like it's only very visible productivity that gets rewarded, right? There's so much that I'm
Mm.
sure we are doing that it's not necessarily measured or that goes unseen, but that is just as valuable in a lot of ways, especially as we think about working with students. I think just a lot of that work just goes unnoticed often because it's, again, maybe the productivity or the product of it is not as obvious.
Yeah. So, in a university setting, what have you seen or what are you seeing? So, you just finished your first year as a professor or just your first year at this university?
At this university, and my third year of full time teaching now.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
How are you seeing, maybe even based on from the first year to now? I imagine lots of things has changed in 3 years. I mean, we think 3 years just went like that, but that was 2022 ish, right? And so now we're like 2025, and almost like lots has changed in the last 3 years. But what are you seeing, or even just noticing in students? I really like the fact you said empathy on the front of the mask. I don't know that I would always say a lot of my professors showed me a lot of empathy, but I'm glad that you have that as a word for you, because I think, and I did have some amazing professors, so some of them did, but definitely it wasn't the prevalent characteristic that they tried to show, not me at least. But what are you seeing in students, or what are you noticing in school, in the university setting, that either is, let's start with one, the thing that's like kind of perplexing you. I mean, we're talking about education. We're going to make some change in education. I love to also hear what excites you, right? But what perplexes you as you are in the world of education, higher education right now, or in these days?
One of the things that like stands out to me, and I mean, I have so much to learn, right? And at this still, but like I guess going through my doctoral program and envisioning like my pedagogy, what I think I'm gonna do, like, draw on the motivation of students, and like all that seems to really be not paused, but it becomes really hard to like have this focus on that when like a lot of my students are going through like these real world issues right now that are just impacting them directly. And we have to bring attention to that.
And I imagine in a topic like mental health counselor, right?
Yeah.
Like you're talking about topics that probably students get caught off guard that they're carrying some stuff that they haven't even noticed, right? Or they haven't given attention to, right? So they read a chapter on PTSD and they're just like maybe like something like that. They realize, wait, I got this, right? And those things that awaken sometimes just awareness that, well, I've been wearing a really good mask my
Well,
whole life to go through high school, work hard, get to college, and now I'm here. I'm supposed to have it all figured out, right? And then you realize where everyone else here is top of their class in high school too, right? So now you're competing on a whole another level of competition if you ever feel like you want to compete, but that kind of like pressure and this, I think. Do you experience that in the topics that you talk about
yeah,
with students?
I think that's key, right? In any field that you're working with other people, that you're trying to help others, whether it's in counseling, whether it's teaching, whether it's nursing, like you have to have some sense of self-awareness, develop yourself, self-growth in order to understand how to better help someone else, right? And certainly I mean, that's a big part of our training, like taking time to better understand ourselves and how our own issues are coming up in the stuff that we're reading and that we're covering.
Because we talk about the mask, I mean, maybe one question I would have for you as a professor is, sometimes we go into high schools and before we, they heard about our work, but they bring us in. And sometimes we have educators, principals, administrators who are like, well, what do you do once you make them talk about that stuff? And I'm like, well, first I'm not making anybody talk about anything, right? And they say, well, what do you do once they've like they use a lot of these big powerful words like when they've exposed all of their stuff, and I'm like, well, and I think my context has always been with this work with this mask is, we design it anonymously for a reason. We are very careful that we're not asking anybody to reveal anything that they would want to hide. We use our language very careful. But what do you like? How do you see in the world or in the education world how we help people realize that like this stuff that when we ask people to write these 6 words, I don't think I'm gonna be able to do anything in 1 hour that's gonna unearth something that wasn't already on the surface, right behind the eyes of the smiles and the athleticism and the kind and all the things we let people see. And what we're trying to help educators see is that I'm not here to try and break open anything. I'm here to say, do you know that there's more to you than anyone can see? And what if we can just start with 3 words of just what would you like? And what I've found often is in most schools that the adults are more afraid than the students. Like the adults are more nervous than the students. And I think it's this idea that as educators, we often feel we have to fix everything. Like
Yep.
a kid tells you that they're stressed. Sometimes teachers go into stress mode trying to help them deal with the stress. And you're like, well, how about we just ask them some more questions? So I think, like, as a professor, how do you see helping educators, these counselors, to help young people because they're going to be working in maybe schools, right? Like, just know that they're not alone, right? That's what we're trying to do in this movement is to help people see you're not alone, but you may be comparing yourself to other people's masks who have more, adornments. They have more accessories in their mask artillery, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
You look at your shoes and you're like, "Oh, that kid has got it all figured out. They got the best shoes they've ever," and you never know what their heart is going through. How do you all discuss that in your classes, or how do you hear students discussing those things they see on a daily basis?
It reminds me of an experience with a colleague. Like I think it was like my first year of teaching. I talked to her about some issues in the classroom I was having, and she told me the same thing of like, can't be everything to everyone. It's hard to let go of that at
Mm,
first, right? Because it's like we have this vision of what we think we're going to accomplish, and the fact is I have to create flexibility around that in order to best be able to work towards it. So I don't know that there's one specific answer to your question, Ashanti,
mhm,
right? But the idea that like, can we I think in this framework of like, okay, before I can think of an intervention that might work for you as a client or as a student, I first have to understand our relationship. In order for me to fully understand our relationship, I first have to understand you. And I can't understand you unless I first understand myself, right? And so once I understand myself, then I can better understand you and where you're coming from. I can better listen to you. and take in your context. Then once I can take in your context, I can better put that into the context of our relationship and the power dynamics that are occurring within that relationship to then be able to collaborate on an intervention that might work for you, right? And
Mm.
so that's kind of the process that we try to teach students of going back down and understanding yourself and then building it back up because so often we start with like, we'll do this intervention, right? I'll call it.
Mm.
And then somehow that's supposed to give us results, but we can't choose the right interventions if we're not understanding and building up that understanding of that other centeredness.
This topic is really powerful to me. Thank you for that and that relationship part because I think I really believe that, and I think I didn't know that as when I first became a teacher. I'm here to teach math. That's what
Uh,
they hired me to do. I'm a math teacher, and I realize most kids won't learn from you if they don't connect with you. Like no matter how smart they are. Like I've had kids who were brilliant who refuse. Like, why are you battling me? I'm not your enemy here, and it was because I'm trying to get them to do a task, and they, without saying they want a connection, they want a connection, and so I'm just like, do your work. You know what I'm saying? Like, stop talking. What are you talking about? Like, there's nothing to talk about here in math. These just numbers on the paper. Make a graph.
uh,
Put your t tables, and you realize like this kid learns by connection. Like if
right.
I don't have a connection with them, like you said, a relationship, they would rather just fail my class because it's not important to them. The math is nothing to them. If without a connection, they would rather just come in and get kicked out every day. And you're like, what's happening here? And I realized I learned that my first year teaching that, okay. And I think I really like the way you described, like if we don't have a connection, if we don't have a relationship, then and if I don't understand myself, I mean, I knew as a teacher I was smart. I was an educator, I was smart, but I had forgotten that first semester how hard it was to be a student. Not the material. The material was nothing for me. The social stuff was the chaos of my existence. So I'm always looking
Right.
around, who's looking at me, who's saying something about me, who's talking about me, and I'm always that person worried about that stuff. The work wasn't the stuff. So I'm not doing the work not because I don't want to do it or can't do it. It's because they're talking about me over there, or something's happening over there, or like all the inputs that are coming into my mind making me not be able to focus, even though academically the work was not even the biggest part of my challenge.
Sure, sure. I mean, I can relate to that in some ways. Ashanti, uh, I did 7 years in community college. Then it took me like almost 9, 10 years to get my bachelor's, and it wasn't because I couldn't do the work. It's because the social context I was in made it so I didn't have access to all the things that would help me be able to succeed. So a little bit about myself. I grew up undocumented for I was undocumented for 25 years of my life. In fact, the last election was my first time voting, and it's something I'm very happy and proud to say. But it was a long ass journey, man. And when it came to going to college, I didn't have the access or the resources, and more importantly, the social networking to show me how to get through it, right? And so it took me forever to be able to do that.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. And I got excited about this topic, so I started asking questions. This conversation is about, you and me as educators in different contexts, but educators. What's important, like in the it's just where we're going next. Like, what topic is really top of mind for you as you enter this 26 school year? Like, what topic is like
Yeah.
already like grabbing your heart, soul, attention, mind, the puzzle pieces of you, right? As we try and show up the first day, like, hey, everything's great, right? Right? I'm here for you. I got empathy, but they can't see what we're going through, right? Like,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
they can't see. Maybe they shouldn't. Maybe they should. But what's top of mind for you right now? What's coming into the school year? What are some things that are like
Yeah, I hear
pressing?
that. Like coming into school year, we all come in with hope, like with excitement, to take on, the world. And then also the reality very quickly starts hitting us as educators and students. The reality set in quickly, right? And for me, a lot of what's on top of mind is like I've been thinking a lot about my students here in Southern California, my immigrant students, my undocumented students, my students who have parents who are undocumented. And so I mean, if I could leave, the listeners with something is to be, pay attention to the challenges that those students are facing right now, right? And specifically right now in the time that we're going through in this country, just very real attacks and threats to people's not just psychological well-being, but like physical safety is in threat here. So that's a lot of what's on my mind. Yeah.
As a professor, and I don't know the makeup of professors at your university, but I know when we talk about K-12, we talk about there's so few men in education, right? And
Sure.
maybe the numbers switch when you get to college. I don't know the numbers, but what are you seeing in your male students as they come in? I know we know that, nationwide, the numbers have flopped. I'll say flopped. The numbers have changed. It went from being primarily male dominated population in colleges to, and I'm thinking about just general, I don't know specific for your university, but just nationwide, that there's so many more women now in college. And I think young men have taken it sometimes, I'll say the wrong way. They're taking it as a negative, right? They're taking it as something, as an attack on them or some other kind of narrative that they're putting around why that is. And I think that in the world, we're experiencing all these different titles of red pill, blue pill, manosphere, this
Yeah.
thing and that thing, right? And all these new words that people are putting to things. How is it? Is it showing up in your class? You're talking about social emotional work and that work, but is it showing up in just how you see it in the university, or you see hearing it show up in other professors' classrooms around how their young men are navigating the world in a new way, in a new world?
No, so in counseling, it's very few men are in the field, right? And so in my classrooms, I'll have, two male students perhaps. And so that's pretty typical of counseling right now. And I think too, because I'm working with graduate students, these are students who have, gone through high school, gone through their undergrad. And now that they're in graduate school, they have some degree of like self awareness and emotional intelligence to be able to explore the conversations that we're having and take them in. And, so they come with, I would say, more than like the average student, perhaps. And so for that reason, like, I feel like, man, I'm so lucky to work with some of these students who, quite frankly, like, they're coming in with this level of social emotional intelligence than I ever had, like, growing up, that I ever came with, or that I was ever exposed to. Like, so I'm in a lot of ways just in awe, about the students I get to work with. Just doing some dope things that I'm like so proud of.
I was thinking about that in terms of like the amount of social emotional awareness. I wonder also. So I was talking to a parent the other day, and I was like, "Listen, I need you to sometimes just take a minute and just stop all the information you know,
Right.
and be in a listening mode, right? Because let's say a parent has a 12-year-old, 13-year-old, 14-year-old, like a teenager. Since that child had a device, that parent created an avatar for that child, right? I say, when did your child get their first account on some game or something? You say, oh, maybe they were 7. So for 7 years, half of their life, they've had these fake names that you've made for them or that they've created, so no one finds out who they are. And they got a new one on that one, and they got another one on that one, they got an email that's that one, they got that. Everything is like some avatar of themselves. And then we're confused that they don't really understand sometimes themselves when we are trying to like, and so they are navigating back and forth between, okay, who am I over here? Am I my real self or am I a fake person? Okay, and they have to, how much work does it take? I can only imagine, right? Because I didn't have to do that growing up, but I have a hard enough time remembering 5 different passwords for the 3 email accounts I got. And you're just like, I forgot the password again. Like, all the different things I have to remember as an adult. But imagine being a
Sure.
teenager having to like, over here, I'm not my real self. I can't tell them where I live. I can't talk about real stuff. I can only talk about. And so how many times do they have to switch in and out of characters in the world? And you imagine that creates some type of intelligence. And as we see, probably we hear from a lot of young people, it creates a lot of some stress, right? It creates some worries, even some anxiety that we hear going. Jonathan Haidt talked about the anxious generation, right?
Yeah.
Like, to not know who you are, where you are, who am I here? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm my real self. Which part of my real self can you handle? Right.
Right.
I'm with family, but how much of my real stuff can my family even handle? Right. And imagine how intelligent they have to get earlier, because they have to keep switching in and out of all of these characters sometimes. As your students are out in the world, or these grad students that are out in the world, are you hearing from them? Are they doing like practical work while they're with you, or is it
Yeah. Yeah. A
practical?
lot of them are.
Yeah. Are you hearing from them like what they're noticing? Are you hearing just anecdotes about stories about what they see kids going through today different
Yeah,
than
I mean, they're working with, like, front lines of, like, just really heavy stuff, whether it be in school settings, a lot of it is learning how to work with parents, which I'm sure you can relate to as an educator, right? Like, yeah, it's so much easier just working with the kid, but, like, you gotta learn how to work with the parent, and it, creates this whole other layer of, complexity that students realize, like, it's not just working with the child, this is really complex work that we gotta be able to manage, right? And that's a lot of what comes up, I think, in the school systems, and then, I mean, a lot of my students are working with, unhoused students and just we gotta go back to basics, helping them get resources and building it up from there. Because you can't just focus on like, well, if we change our thoughts, if we reframe our thoughts, then everything will be better. And it's like, if it only were so simple.
then as a professor in this world of education, how are you doing?
Oh, gonna- got the big question. I'm doing my best. I am in a lot of ways. I mentioned earlier that fear, that worry, um, that imposter syndrome that I still carry with me and like navigating this system that like I never thought I belonged in, but in a lot of ways was told like you don't belong in this country, right? So still learning to manage that for myself and what that means for the work that I do and how that, those internalized narratives pop up every now and then. And then I also, in terms of how I'm doing, I'm also like feeling very proud of like the students I get to work with and the work I'm doing and then how it kind of generates to how they're going out into these communities and these schools and the impact that they're having. It's like, um, it's very rewarding that again, I get to be in this position that I was like, damn, I never thought I'd be here. So in that way, it's the most rewarding work I've had so far.
So you talked about that puzzle piece on the front, the character, and really like letting your students know that you have empathy for them, that you know that they're made up of all these different parts. So as an educator to educator, who is holding empathy for you?
Yeah, I think my community is like first and foremost my family. These are conversations that I think with my wife we're very open about and we constantly have with each other. And then um, you know, an experience I had when I was in was when I was a graduate student. I was a graduate assistant, and this was back in like 2017 or something. And it was when DACA was the first time President Trump tried to rescind DACA in 2017, and I was a DACA recipient at the time, and it was such a crazy moment. But I remember coming on campus and like I didn't have to even say anything, but there were people around me who checked in on me, right? And so that's why like I've wanted to stay working on a university campus because I know having that experience was so valuable. And so just being here, I know there are people that who by nature of knowing me know the things that affect me, and so they're able to check in on me, and likewise I'm able to check in on them and checking in on my students now. And it's just those simple check-ins of like I don't even gotta explain anything, but how's it going? It's been really valuable for me.
Thank you, Edson.
Yeah.
Thank you for being in this conversation. Thank you for the work that you're doing to help educators prepare for going out into the not only the world but into these classrooms and settings where their work is so needed and where they have to remember to look at themselves too. I think that's so important. So thank you for that work and thank you for being a professor who shows empathy. I think I've definitely met professors who are like, "Hey, you're in college. Figure it out for yourself," right? Like, there's some
Right.
truth. There's some truth to that too. But I think
Right. Right.
there's with a lack of compassion of it. Like, you're like, hey, only 12% of kids pass my class. Like, and with joy, right? You're like, what are you talking about? How are you cheering that on, right? Like that type of like behavior, right? And I remember a professor who had a certain type of percentage that he was proud of, and I was just like, but I remember having a professor who said, "No, I got you. Come see me. I got you."
Right.
we're gonna get through this. We're gonna get through this. And then the light and day difference of what that feels like from a student who wants to do well.
Right. And for me, it was like those people who helped me find my direction. Or before, again, it took me a while. I didn't feel like I had a sense of direction, and it just coming into contact with people who actually cared and who noticed is what helped me find a sense of direction. Right. And so, I mean, in a lot of ways, that's what I hope I'm doing now as an educator. So that's a big motivating factor.
Well, thank you for the hard work you put in, the years to get to where you are now, and I think you hold an inspiration for students who may be considering giving up and saying it's not too late. It takes what it takes, and you can do it too. So thank you
Yeah.
for that. Any
Yeah.
last words you have for folks out there as we're in this new school year? Any words for either students or your or colleagues, or even for teachers out there who are helping prepare the next generation? Any words of encouragement for any audience out there?
No, just, I mean, a reminder to pause. We have a lot of things we need to get through in our teaching, but like if we can pause and understand that our students are coming in with like just full of like contextual factors that are forming the way they're presenting. We try to take that in or consider that, and hopefully we'll be able to better connect with them and then from there build up approaches that will work for them.
Thank you. Let's make it more personal. What would you tell 14-year-old Edson, a young man out there who is going through what you were going through? And I name not his name, not Edson, but he's going through what you were going through. What words of encouragement do you have for that young man out there?
Um, man, I could do this. I mean, at 14, I was,
Or you
uh,
can pick an age. Pick an age. You can pick
n-
whatever age.
nah, for me, I would say it was more like 18, 19, 20 when I came more into my awareness of my status and what that meant in
Yeah.
terms of limited access and resources. I would say is that, you know, eh, continue to believe in yourself, and that a lot of the adversity that you're facing is not within you. It's the context that you're in, right? And that the systems that we're in weren't built for you, but you're gonna make a pathway for others to feel more comfortable in.
Dr. Edson Andrade, thank you for being on the show. And I hope we'll get this message out to as many young men as we can to don't give up, keep going. I don't know you very well. I just met you today, but I'm so proud of you. And I appreciate you for the words you've shared with folks here today.
Well, Shanti, thanks for having this platform. Thanks for wanting to, reach all the male educators and the students that we work with. And it's good work that you're doing here. Appreciate you having me.
Thank you. Well, folks, you see, Edson and I, we shared our masks here publicly, but you don't have to share yours publicly. You can do yours anonymously at millionmask.org. You're going to help us reach 100,000. We have a long way to get to 1 million, but every mask is another person who we can remember and remind that you're not alone. So remember that you're not alone. Remember that it's not too late, and however long it takes is how long it takes. Edson proved that, and we hope that you will remember that. Take care, folks. Have a good one. Thank you, Edson. Good to see you.